Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining me today, we've got a very special guest. He is a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. He holds 26 national age championship gold medals for Australia. And most recently, he dropped a 343 at the Queensland Championships just this past week. We've got Elijah Winnington.
Hey guys, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm excited to sit down and talk with you a little bit. We've got to start with the Queensland Championships, especially after the year it has been but mostly out of the pool. Tell me about this meet leading up to it, what your expectations were, and how it actually all unfolded.
Yeah, so, like you said, it's been a crazy year for everyone, including us Australians. I mean, we haven't had it as bad. But, we still had a pretty hectic lockdown and stuff like that. So my first half of the year was, very up and down until I decided to make the move and actually move from the Gold Coast to Brisbane under new leadership and new coaching under Dean Boxall at St. Peter's Western. And that was just, I thought I needed something to change. So I had about 6 months in that program before this latest Queensland Champs meet where I did some PBs, which was really good. But it was really just sort of working on new things that I hadn't done before and new work and maybe some more kilometers in the pool that I hadn't maybe touched on in my life before. So there were a lot of things that changed in the swimming. So coming into this meet, I didn't really know exactly how I was going to perform. I knew I was swimming fast, but to do PBs when I haven't, done that sort of stuff in a couple of years now was really promising after only 6 months of being in this new program. So, I mean, for me, this whole week was just a bonus, even going faster than I've ever been. But to do some world-class times was really special for me.
No kidding. I mentioned the 343. You dropped a 145 in the 2 free. Just break down those races a little bit. How were you feeling before them, and what made them, what made them click so well for you?
Yeah, so the Turin freestyle was on the first night of racing, and I swam a pretty good heat. I only had to swim about a 147 to get into the final, and it felt pretty comfortable. And I knew I was in, my rhythm felt really good, and my stroke felt really good. So I knew I was going into the final with a good shot to do, a 145. That was my goal. And fortunately for myself, I had another swimmer, Alex Graham, go 145 in the final as well. So we were, just pushing each other the whole way. And it was a great race. I felt, amazing. Everything really just clicked in the water, and it sort of showed what the past 6 months that I've been doing put into practice, really well. And similarly with the 400 was the following night. I had a good heat swim. I only had to go around 349 to make the final. And again, felt really comfortable. I knew I was in, a good stead. And I had, again, Jack McLaughlin go 344 too. So again, I had another person there to, battle it out with and push me right to the end. So there was no complacency in the race. But they both, the races felt very different to how they felt in the past, but also very positive. And I'm really looking forward to how I can develop that in the next 6 months leading into, Olympic trials and that sort of stuff, if that all goes ahead.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I'm so excited. First of all, I just got to throw out on the all-time Australian men's performers for the 400 meter freestyle, you're now number 6 behind Kieran Perkins, David McKeon, Grant Hackett, Mac Horton, and Ian Thorpe. that is pretty good company to hold.
Yeah, it's a very impressive list. And all five of those guys are guys that I've personally met and have strived to become or strive to achieve to attain those goals that they hit. And this week was just one of them. Obviously, I believe that I still want to go faster, and I still want to maybe knock some of them off the list as well. But to be even mentioned in a list like that, like they're Australian legends in the world of swimming, and Australia's history in the 400 freestyle is incredibly deep. Always performing well. Mac was Olympic champion 4 years ago, so I've got some stiff competition there. But it's actually an honor to be up and with those guys, and hopefully I can progress even further and do the country proud.
Yeah, I just looked at that list and I just had to read it because it's like, holy crap. I mean, yeah, everyone above you is, like you said, just a legend. So that's cool. So congrats on that. So let's start. So it sounds like you had a good Queensland Championships. That was an exciting meet for even from the U.S. to watch and be like, okay, we're throwing down some fast times. You finally got some long course racing back. Like, this is cool. So let's start with your move. So you move from your longtime home at the Gold Coast to go train with Dean Boxall, St. Peter's West, like you said. With names like Clyde Lewis, who we had on the show earlier last month, Ariane Titmus, world champion, so you've got some good training partners. Tell me about what went into that decision, because you also mentioned that, for those first few months of quarantine, it was kind of up and down until you decided to make that move.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll be honest with you, until quarantine, I really didn't have any intention of wanting to move or anything like that. So I was born and bred on the Gold Coast for just over 20 years. So my whole life was South Queensland. And, I was loving the program I was in. My coach, Richard Scarce, had, previously gotten me to, world junior records, 26 national age records, like gold medals, sorry. So like, I had nothing, against the program or anything there, but for just myself, I didn't have that spark for swimming that I once did when I was younger. I was becoming very stale. And I sort of sat down with myself and just had to think over this quarantine period when I had extended time to think, what would be best for me moving forward, not in terms of a swim program, but just for myself mentally, because, I'm a firm believer that if you're not enjoying, where you are or, wherever you are in your journey, that you're not going to get the best outcome. Whereas if you are enjoying it. So just like thinking over that sort of stuff, I realized that, maybe a move would be a positive thing for me. And Brisbane's only about an hour's drive north of the Gold Coast anyway. So it's not, a crazy big life shift. But I got in contact with Dean Boxall, and our goals really aligned. He seemed like a coach that knew a direction for me. Ariane Titmus, the female 400-meter world champion the year before, so clearly he knows how to coach a 400, 200-meter swimmer, especially with Clyde as well. So for me, it was a no-brainer. So I talked to him on a Friday, and I was up and packed and moved by the Monday. So yeah, it was just a quick process. I knew it was the right thing for me, and that was around June this year. So about smack bang middle of Australia's quarantine. And then I've been there since, and I've been loving it. And I'm glad the results this weekend showed for it.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the training you've done since the move. I know you mentioned you've changed focuses. It's been a little different than what you had been used to in the past. Yeah.
I mean, not to get too technical and that sort of stuff, but sort of
please
things,
do.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, So previously, in my old program, I'd do a lot of like race pace specific work, and a lot of my block would be around based around that. And what I found when I moved was there was a really strong foundation on aerobic and a lot of kilometers. So for the first few months, I was doing pretty much no less than 7 kilometers a session over 9 sessions. So it just stacked up, and I never have really done that much. I mean, compared to, longer distance swimmers, it might not sound like a lot, but for me, coming from a real 200 background, it was quite a bit of a shift for me. And I found that shift with that aerobic block just completely boosted my fitness when it did come time for the race pace, the broken 400 suited efforts, things like that. When you get down to the nitty gritty, 6 weeks to go to a major competition, I found that my fitness was just able to back up and back up and back up, which was a really positive thing for me because, the way I split a 400, I tend to go out a bit faster and try and, hold off the Max and the, previously Sun Yangs who would come home in 53 seconds or whatever, something like that. So fitness was a major thing for me that I had to change. And that was the biggest shift that I knew as I had become extremely fit. I always thought I was very fit, but after coming, I realized that I jumped to a whole new level. And again, it showed in my 400. I pretty much split the same 300 as I did as my previous PB. I just came home in the last 100 a second and a half faster, right? So it just showed that I'd built that fitness. And it's, something that I know I need to continually work on and even tweak my race plan a little bit, because I feel like there's definitely things in there that I need to change and sit down with Dean and discuss of how I actually improve, because, you hit a stage where you don't just improve seconds out of the blue. You've got to find the 0.1s and the 0.2s here or there that can sort of add up over time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's not every day you're like, okay, it's swimming's getting a little stale. I need to change it up. I'm going to go to a program where I train more.
Exactly right. And that was a big thing for me, is because I knew that I'd be going to a program where I would possibly be, working a lot harder than whereas if I was. So I had to really jump out of my comfort zone to go to where I was. But when you want something bad enough, you sort of do whatever it takes, right? So, swimming has been my passion since I was a little boy. So it was a no-brainer for me to just, make the move.
Yeah. I mean, and how has the environment been? We talked about some of your training mates, but just, the environment at St. Peter's, what's it been like, and how has that impacted your overall stance on swimming as well?
I mean, it's been incredible. And like I mentioned, I didn't really have that spark. That's why I did want to move. But since moving to St. Peter's, I've made, but not also, I always had really good friends in that squad. And it's amazing that the company that you can surround yourself with when you're, on the daily grind, how much enjoyable it can actually be. And you actually get so much more out of yourself when you want to go through that and you want to go through it with your teammates rather than you feel like you just have to try and achieve your goals. So the environment's been incredible, and Dean is an incredible coach. There is, no doubt why he has won Australia's, swimming coach of the year for the past few years. Is he really knows how to individualize and get everything out of different people in different ways. He doesn't just put a blanket over everyone and just expect that to work. He's very much tuned to every single one of his athletes, and he has, nearly 30 in his squad. So it's extremely impressive. And, he got the best out of me this past week and over the past 6 months. And, our previous relationship, we'd, not really spoken that much. So I found that extremely impressive. And just the people that I can surround myself with in that squad has been amazing.
What is a Dean set that you've done in the past 6 months that really sticks out to you as as challenging, or one that you felt you did really well on?
Probably one of the hardest sets I've done it's like a lactate removal type set. So it's 400 on, what was it on, I had to be under 4:25 on 5:30, I think, into 200 effort on 4 minutes or something like that, 6 times. So, I mean, I'm having to go around, A3 on the 400. So it's, solid. It's not anything too hard. And then into a 200 effort where I'd have to be 156 or I'd get absolutely yelled at. And that was something I learned too, is, you've got to hit your times or else you are going to absolutely cop it. But that was really tough for me because that was, one of the first sets where it's like getting really down into the hard stuff. This is, about 3 months ago now, where we passed the just initial aerobic phase where you're just doing a lot of Ks, a lot of aerobic. This is like that middle awkward period where it's like, we need you to absolutely kill yourself, but we also need you to hit your time. So it's just like, you've got to back up and back up and back up, right? So that set for me was extremely tough because, I would even think doing 5 200s alone, max effort would be very hard, let alone adding another 200 plus 400s on top of that. Plus a finisher that we would do after that, whether it's 100 effort or a broken 400 or, whatever it is, that was a surprise as well on top of that. I found that very hard. And then, to back that up, we do that 3 weeks in a row, right? So every Thursday afternoon we would do that set. So I'd do it the first time, finish the session and be like, oh, okay, that's done. And he'll be like, okay, we're doing that next week and the week after. And every Thursday afternoon, I'd just be like, oh my goodness, like I can't do that again. And sure enough, he got the best out of me. And week after week, I actually improved. After the first week, I was like, there's no way I could go any better. The week later, I improved. No way I could go any better. The week later, I improved. And that's how it is, right? Over the 6 months, week after week, there was small improvements to the point where, like this last week, I've been doing PBs in my main events.
Yeah. What did you get down to holding in those 200s?
So the last week, I held, I think it was 4 156s and then 2 157s was my best. The first week was shocking. I think I was a couple 157s and then a couple 158s. And then it got to the point where he didn't even tell me my time because it was too slow. So I didn't even get time for the last ones. I know. And then the week later was a little bit better. I was a couple 156s, then a couple 157s, and then maybe 1 or 2 58s at the end. And then the last week I was trying to hit them all, but the last few just chopped off a little bit. But I was pretty happy with the set.
That seems good. Did you have other people doing the set with you, or were you flying solo?
So there's a distance squad at St. Peter's that consists of maybe 8 or so swimmers. Myself and Ariane are the only Australian dolphins that would be in that distance squad. The rest are, we have one New Zealand girl and then a lot of age group swimmers. But those age group swimmers, I mean, they're all national age champions, been to, junior world packs, they're extremely talented young athletes. And, we all grind it out together, and then the middle distance and sprint group do a, similar set, maybe just a little bit less. So they're not doing, 4K or whatever the set is.
Gotcha. Whew. Yeah, that sounds pretty intense. But I'm glad you made it through. So let's take it back even a little bit further. When quarantine first did start, you mentioned those few months of kind of up and down. I mean, take me through it before you finally decided to make the move. What was up? What was down? How was that time out of the pool? I mean, what were you going through? Because I know everyone kind of had a hard time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not very easy when you get told that, your dream is being postponed. Everyone had worked towards, Tokyo 2020. That was the goal for every, major swimmer around the world. And so when that got canceled, everyone was like, okay, well, what do we do? So, one day it's on, and then that afternoon it's like, oh, well, we can't train anymore. That's it. So that was massive for me. Because I didn't really know where to go, and I knew I wasn't really enjoying things at my current state. I came off of the back of quite an unsuccessful 2019. I missed the world championship team. You know, I didn't perform when I needed to. I hadn't really hit any PBs. I was in a bit of a stale spot after coming off the back of, you know, an extremely high 2018, you know, where I won a Commonwealth Games medal. I finished the year breaking my first junior world record. You know, I came off the back of this massive high and then I hit a massive low. So towards the end of 2019 and then the start of this year, I was already a little bit uncertain with where my swimming was progressing. And I didn't really see any changes in my swimming and in my current program back then of how it would progress forward. So I had even a little bit of doubts about Tokyo 2020. So then as soon as things got cancelled in March, I, you know, just sat down and, like I've mentioned, decided to make the move. It'd be the best thing for me, not even if it makes my swimming any better, it'd be the best thing for me mentally. And that was my main driving factor, is because I believe that if you have to do anything, you need to be happy doing it. So I knew it would make me the happiest, and I decided to just, you know, jump in. And yeah, like I said, a few days later, I'd made the move. But even the quarantine itself was really hard, being out of the water. Fortunately for myself, I had, you know, family friends that owned a learn to swim pool that would give me early morning access and stuff like that. So I could, you know, at least roll my arms over in a, you know, 1 foot pool deep pool. But, you know, I was, you know, fortunate to stay fit in that period. So when I did come back, I was able to, you know, hit the ground running. But like everyone, it's been a hectic 2020. It's been an absolute roller coaster. But to finish the year off like this is, you know, incredible. It's definitely not the feeling I had when I started this year. So I'm just happy that I'm in a much better place than I was, you know, 9-10 months ago.
Yeah, it like you said, sounds like a good way to finish off the year, which is really cool. Because I mean, I think, you know, everyone was in a different place when quarantine started, but if you were already in kind of a stale, well, what you know, flimsy place when quarantine started, that sounds tough. But I'm glad you were able to find something that worked. And dude, it seems like it's working. So let's go back, like you mentioned, very up 2018 and then a low in 2019. Let's hit 2018 first. I mean, tell me about that year from your perspective, because like you said, world junior record, Commonwealth Games gold medalist. It's like, were you expecting all that year?
No, but you know, I was confident in my swimming ability. I mean, not to take you back even further, but I had a successful 2017, right? So, 2017, I made junior world championships, and this is sort of the year where things really dropped for me. I think I went from like a 350 400 to a 345. I went from a 148 to a 146. So 2017 was when I had my big drops in swimming. You know, everyone talks about those big drops when you're a bit younger. That was my year where I progressed from an age group swimmer to hitting some of the open times. I hit, you know, top 8 in the world in the 400 freestyle that year. You know, 146.8 at the time would have made a semi-final at, you know, a world championships that year. So that was like my big, okay, I'm no longer this age group national champion anymore. Now I'm progressing into the open level. You know, I've gone from the top of the age, now I'm at the bottom of the open. So that was my progression year. So 2018, I was confident moving forward, but I also just had a free swing of the bat, right? I'm this young kid that nobody expects me to do anything, so it doesn't really matter. But I can also do times that are competing with these guys. So our Commonwealth Games trials were in February, and I did just that. I, you know, made the team. I came fourth at the trials, so they selected me for the relay, and I got to go on my first senior Australian team at Commonwealth Games, and then later on to Pan Pacs later that year. But then at the 2018 Commonwealth Games, I got to swim in the final, and I swam fantastic. I swam a 145 in the final. So then again, it just progressed even further, and I was like, okay, well, 6 months ago I was 148. Now I'm at a 145. So like things were, you know, really shooting, and my mind was, you know, going places like, oh my goodness, like I'm swimming so well. And I think it maybe was a little bit my downfall going into 2019 as I became a little bit complacent. I thought that, oh, well, whatever I'm doing is clearly working, so I'll just keep doing that. However, little did I know that to keep getting better, you have to keep improving things and keep doing more instead of just do what you're doing, because doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting just the same result. And that's what happened for me. Is then later that year at Pampax, I swam a 147 in the touring freestyle, 348 in the foreign freestyle. So like I'd sort of actually gone backwards. And that was just a product of me not changing a thing. I thought I was just doing it fine. So I just kept doing that. So then coming home from 2018 Pampax, about 4 months later was the Queensland Championships that year. And that would have been my last chance to break a junior world record. And that was been a goal of mine since I was like 13, when maybe 14, when I saw Maxime Rooney break the touring freestyle in 147.1. And that was always my goal. It's a 147.1. I want to break a junior world record, 147.1. And, you know, at the Junior World Championships, I went 146.8. I came third, and the guy that won went 146.4, and he broke the Junior World record, right? So I did the time that I always wanted, but I came third, right? So I was just off, and, you know, I was happy with that, but, you know, a little bit dissatisfied. So 2018, I had one more shot at the Queensland Championships. And, you know, fortunately that year I swam 146.1, and that was massive end to the year for me. That was like everything I'd ever capped off. I was like, well, great. Like I'm swimming well again. Pampax was just an anomaly. I can hit this next year. 2019, you know, I had some massive goals. You know, I wanted to medal at World Championships. I was, you know, announcing myself on the world stage in 2019. So I had very high expectations, and I went into the year with those expectations, and again, just became complacent. I did the same thing thinking that, you know, what I could do as an age group swimmer would carry over to being an open swimmer. And it didn't go that way. And at the trials, I, you know, completely missed the team. I was well off. I was 348, 147 again. And that was a massive blow for me. But fortunately, instead of going to Worlds, I decided to book a ticket to the Phillips 66 American Nationals I think that was San Francisco. I think it was something there.
Bay Area.
And Bay Area, sure. And that was a great experience for me because I'd never raced at an American run meet before. And to see the depth that you had to do to not only, you know, medal, but to make finals. You know, top 8 were doing times that, you know, in Australia would win the championship. So it was a very similar even to like a Worlds, because you'd have to go absolutely max in the heat to make the final. And then there was stiff competition in the final to, you know, get to where your PBs were. And 5 weeks after the wasn't going there because I knew it would be stiff competition. I knew I wasn't swimming well. However, I used that as an opportunity to change some things. So in that 5 weeks, I completely reshifted my friendship group, my diet, how I swam. You know, everything changed, and it was a massive thing for me. And I went over to America and I swam well. I swam a 146.1 again, and I dropped times in, you know, 5 weeks. I didn't think I could hit. But again, there was no real improvements. And so I came home from 2019 feeling better than the trials, but not completely satisfied. And that's when sort of a downward spiral of my enjoyment in swimming sort of happened. Is I would then rock up to the pool and just go through the motions and just waiting to race again. Because, you know, as most swimmers, I just absolutely love racing. Training is maybe not the funnest thing I do. So the next thing for me was ISL, on the first year of ISL. So it's coming under training. I was just like, all right, one more, just get through this session, and I'm going to, you know, ISL soon. I'm going to ISL soon. And I went over to ISL and I swam well short course. And I was like, all right, this is great. Like, I'm having fun. But although
sounds like fun.
Well, yeah, exactly. Although I was swimming well, I just didn't have that passion when I was there racing or when I was training. I was just like, I'm literally doing this because this is what I feel like I have to do. Um, and it wasn't good for me mentally, but the only thing getting me through was, okay, well, I've got the Olympics next year. Let me just go to the Olympics and then I can reassess. Like it's too soon to change, anything because, I won't make improvements. I need to stay where I'm at. I've been here for 12 years. I've swum well before, so I'll just do that. And I fell into the trap of doing what I'd always done again. And like I said, I came into 2020 really upset with my swimming. And when it all got cancelled, I thought that was the best opportunity for me to change. And here I am, happy and swimming fast. So it was the greatest decision I think I've ever made.
That's high praise.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to those the world trials in 2019 just to get some context. I mean, I think like you said, was not a great performance in the water physically. I mean, just take me through emotionally where you kind of felt like you were at, because I mean, you just took us on a roller coaster and there was a lot of highs and lows. I mean,
Yeah.
just back and forth, back and forth. I mean, heading into those trials, did you feel pretty confident?
Yeah. So, I mean, the day before the trials, when I'm, doing my pre-swims and stuff like that, I was swimming phenomenal. I was doing push 53s at 400 pace and it felt easy. And I was thinking, this is it. This is my year. I was like, I'm going 341. I'm knocking everybody off. Like, I'm going to be world champion, right? Little was my mistake that, I have to actually make the world's team before I can become world champion. So I'd already jumped ahead of myself, right? I'd already, gotten this too confident. And then when it got to race day, I wasn't nervous. I had nothing. I, was like, I'm going to swim well. But as soon as I dove in the water, when I had no adrenaline, no nerves, and I was complacent, and then I started doubting what I'd done, everything just fell apart during the race. I think I could have swum much better at that time with how much work I'd done. I just fell apart during the race, and that's when it counts. And physically, I think I was fine, but mentally, I just wasn't there. I just was not prepared for anything that can happen during that race. Normally I would always in an age group swim, just switch off my mind and do what I'd always done. But when you're sort of racing the Olympic champion in Mac Horton, Jack McLaughlin, who's, won Pan Pacs the year before, I'm swimming against the world's best. They are in the top 5 in the world for the past 3 or 4 years. And I'm swimming next to them. And when I dive in and I don't feel very good, things in my head start going and ticking, and you go, uh-oh, like you have to be at your best to beat these guys, let alone you can't be thinking like this. And before I knew it, I was turning at 300 meters and I was 3 body lengths behind, and it's too late. And once you have a bad swim, if you're not mentally strong like I wasn't back then, the rest of the week's written off because you go, oh, I'm not swimming well, so this is it, right? But obviously, if you're resilient and you're mature, you can learn that any swim can just be changed. One swim doesn't define your whole week. So I think what went wrong for me in 2019 was very much mental. Which is then what leads into, like I was saying in my story, in the end of 2019, why I was so unhappy. I was just so unmentally strong, just because I was unhappy. And it took changing to change that.
Yeah, which makes total sense. And I think you described that process really well of you dive in and you're complacent and you kind of expect it. And so then, things start to slip a little and then your brain just goes, wait a second, what's going on? And then you start questioning everything. And then all of a sudden the wheels fall off and you're 3 body lengths behind at the 300. That's really interesting. I feel like that's something a lot of swimmers can relate to, is just having and managing your expectations and what you're doing going into a big meet like that. And so then you decide to go to the Phillips 66 Nationals, and that in between 5 weeks, you said you changed everything. Heading into those 5 weeks, did you see your lifestyle as like, okay, maybe this isn't like the best, or do you feel like you changed it just because you needed a change?
At that point, I changed it because I felt like I just needed a change. I knew I had to change something. I didn't know what. So in 5 weeks, it's not a lot of time. So I just went, well, you know what? Let me change everything and see if that helps, which looking back, I don't think is healthy at all because it took a massive toll on me. I, completely changed my body composition because I was eating all these weird foods I'd never eaten before. I was doing a completely different gym program I'd never done before. I was swimming completely different. I literally gone, well, look, I don't know if it's my food. I don't know if it's my swimming, and I don't know if it's my gym. I don't know if it's my lifestyle outside. So I was like, you know what? Let me change all of it and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I did improve. So I was like, okay, there's some improvements there, but that 5 weeks was, hell for me. I just hated it because I was like, well, I want to do what I just did. I've been friends with them forever and I want to go hang out with them. Or, I like doing that swim session. I want to do that again. Or I like this food. I think that works. But because I decided to change everything to see how it went and I committed to that, I just, dove head first. Looking back, I don't think there was much else I could do in a short period to find out what could change. But with more time, I've later developed over the past 6 months that, you can change things so incrementally small at a time. I can change my swimming very small. I can change my gym, and then I can change my diet and just mush them all together very slowly, because then it feels like I'm still living my same normal life and it's, what I love doing. And, you create new habits instead of forcing yourself to do them. So that 5 weeks was a weird process for me, and it was definitely out of my comfort zone, but I'm glad I went through that because it's through all these little life lessons that you get to learn to what to do. Like I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you about the stuff I've learned if I never did that. If I just had have done the same thing, gone to Phillips 66 Nationals and swum the exact same, we wouldn't be having this conversation about, what I've learned. So while I don't think it was great for me, I definitely think that these are the little experiences that, develop you not only into the swimmer that you become, but also the person and the character that you have. Because, without character, without joy, without happiness, like I've said, why put yourself through hours and hours and hours and hours of pain in the pool when you could be hanging out with friends?
So many hours of pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you raise it. It's a great point. And you can attribute that through these last 3 years, again, such a roller coaster, lots of ups and downs, and you learn so much throughout all that, and especially through the downs, right? Or the weird periods, the 5 weeks where you literally change your entire life. You learn through that, and that's a cool thing to hear your perspective on, for sure. So you get through that. You've gone to Queensland Championships now. Looking forward, what's next on the agenda?
I mean, the way I see it is I'm halfway with the process that my change was occurring, right? So when I moved, I knew I have pretty much 1 year till the Olympic trials at that point in June. And so I knew Queensland States was around the 6-month mark, and I was like, great time to reassess and how everything's going. So the way I see it, I'm only halfway through my progression and my change. Is I haven't fully changed everything I want to, and I haven't achieved everything I want to. And I'm really excited about what this next 6 months will be, because that's when everything will come together. That's when the final product of, Elijah Winnington happens. And I mean, obviously the next thing for most athletes is Olympic Games, Olympic trials. I've got to make the team first. I'm not making that mistake again. And I'm just going to take one step at a time. I go on training camps early next year. I'm training right through Christmas, and I'm just going to enjoy this period and, love what I'm doing.
Well, Elijah, I appreciate you sitting down and taking some time to talk with me for a little bit. Any parting thoughts before we sign off?
No, just, I can't stress this enough. If you're not happy, you've got to be happy in what you're doing, because that is the main thing in the swimming world, or in any, aspect in life, is you've got to be happy with what you're doing, because there's no point doing something if you're not enjoying it.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.